For more on this, we are being joined by Ben Aries, founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews and also former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. He's joining us live from Berlin. Welcome back to WION. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you talk about the source of differences between the United States and Russia on the sudden escalation of fighting in Syria?
Well, it's very confused, and the showdown that we just saw in the UN, to me, is very reminiscent of the Cold War era, where both sides are trading barbs and accusations. But there's, to be frank, a lot of double standards going on here. They're both accusing each other of supporting terrorists, and it's because the US have designated Assad as a terrorist, and vice versa. I mean, HTS is designated as a terrorist. It's actually a splinter group from Al Qaeda, and it's also associated with ISI, and so is definitely, founded in terrorist groups. Nevertheless, from the American side, that they have been supporting the HTS. I mean, previously it was known as Nusra Front, and after left the Al Qaeda network, and the Americans funded it and trained it and gave it some ammunition and weapons in order to fight because they were fighting against the Assad regime. On the other side, Assad has been accused of killing 500,000 people with chemical weapons. Nevertheless, Assad and Moscow are friends, and Assad invited the Russian forces into Syria during his struggle against the rebels, and they prevailed. There's been several years, 4 years, I think, of relative peace and quiet. And now the situation in Syria has become destabilized because that Assad was relying on both Russian and Iranian-backed forces from Iraq, from Hezbollah, in order to keep control of the country. Those forces have been drawn down because of the other conflicts, particularly in the Middle East and also Ukraine. And so the rebels here have taken the opportunity where their enemies inside Syria have been weakened to do this spectacular attack and take back Aleppo. And really, it boils down to that. I mean, both sides accusing each other of supporting terrorists, but actually, when you strip away the veneer, this is just big power politics where both sides, the Russians and the Americans, are using proxies in order to fight a war in Syria to, extend their interest there. The Americans want Assad out, and the Russians have benefited from their relationship with Assad and want to keep him in.
And what are the prospects for de-escalation in the Syria conflict at this point? And how do you see this conflict shaping in the near future? Where do we go from here?
Well, like I say, until the war in Ukraine ends, that Russia is very thinly stretched. It was relying in Syria on some of its special forces. Those have been withdrawn. A lot of equipment has been withdrawn for the Ukrainian operation, which is throwing everything into and is desperately short of everything. At the same time, the Wagner private military company, that was being heavily used, but since its leader, Prigozhin, was died or killed in a plane crash, and Wagner has been broken up, then that has ceased to be an effective force. And that was one of the Russians' main forces in the Syrian conflict, was Wagner. They were relying on it in order to train the Syrian army and to also provide military backup. And at the same time, Iran is also distracted because of its conflict with Israel. And Hezbollah, which is Iranian-backed, they've also been withdrawn back to Lebanon, where the Lebanese have been fighting with the Israelis, have been running a bombing campaign in southern Lebanon, although there's a shaky ceasefire in place at the moment. And so for the short term, until these other conflicts die down, then the resources that both of these players, Iran and Russia, would want to send back to stabilize things in
Right,
Syria are simply not available. So for the short term, I think it's going to
right.
remain unstable because HTS is going to take advantage of this weakness in order to, solidify the gains it's already made. And their goal, unlike Al Qaeda, is specifically to take control of Syria, oust Assad, and impose an Islamic regime in Syria itself. And so that, I think, is going to continue.
Mhm.
I mean, stepping back, we could say, look, we've been worried about a broader war in the region,
Right,
starting with Hamas
right,
attacks, and I think we're starting to
right,
see
right.
exactly that.
Oops. Thank you so much for all of those comments, Ben, and that analysis. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon as these stories in the region develop one by one.
My pleasure.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.